I hope they're right and I'm wrong. They should be the ones that are right, and I should be the one that is wrong. So if they're right, we'll look back at this in 5 years and say, wow, what a job by Caserio. But if this fails, this might be the worst day in Houston Texans history,
man,
and this will live in infamy.
No, don't say this.
It's
This
possible.
isn't Pearl Harbor.
It's in play.
Jeremy Branham and me, after the first round of the 2023 NFL Draft, live at Valencia's Tex-Mex Garage. That was a fun party that we had, as the Houston Texans did a lot that night. They drafted C.J. Stroud second overall. I don't think anyone expected them to take a quarterback as we got closer and closer to the draft kicking off. And then in the biggest shocker of that night, the Texans traded pick 12 that they had that year and the 33rd pick, a second rounder, plus a first round pick and a third round pick in the next year draft to move up to the third overall pick and take Will Anderson Jr.
I forgot it was that much.
It was a lot.
I forgot about the 33rd pick element of it, where that's like basically another first rounder. Like that's one pick away from being a first rounder.
I think it's very fair to say that this trade was a home run. Anderson, through 2 seasons, has 18 sacks. He's coming off an 11-sack year in a year where he played 14 games. And it stands to reason that as he gets older, he will get better. Texans defensive coordinator Matt Burke said this offseason that he has added a new move to his repertoire. Both Anderson and Daniil Hunter believe that they could have had more sacks last year, that they will have more sacks this coming season. It's a very fearsome 1-2 tandem. I think Anderson's attitude is infectious. I think he is exactly the kind of player that you want to have leading your defense. And I think when the Texans made that trade, they knew that that was something that they were also getting in addition to his play. And I think that in retrospect, the move clearly a home run, not a day that will live in infamy. Jeremy did at the very least say, hey, like, I hope that I end up being wrong here. And it's great that we can say that just 2 years later. What's interesting, though, is that for some reason, and I have some thoughts about one of the football online content creators, the 33rd team. They're Pro Football Focus disciples. They have moved elsewhere. There's Steve Palazzolo, and there's also Sam Monson. Got to say, for Sam Monson, I just have a tough time listening to anything he says because he's talking about football with a very slight Irish accent. That might be against my own people. Whatever. It is what it is, okay? He also was very, very cocky. If he was less cocky and condescending talking about an American sport, I think I would take his word a little bit more seriously. I just don't at this moment in time. But that's me. That's a personal thing. For whatever reason, these two decided to have a conversation about, in retrospect, was that the right move for the Texans to move up and go get Will Anderson? I think this is definitely an indictment on the ability of NFL content creators to create content during the offseason. I'm way better at it than them, but that's fine. I'm not going to continue to pat myself on the back here. Why are we having this debate? It's not a debate. It's over. The Texans saw Will Anderson, and whether it was because of D'Amico Ryans or because of Nick Caserio or a combination of both, because they were talking about collaboration leading up to that draft, they saw what he brings to the table from a leadership perspective, how he was the anchor of that Alabama defense. They clearly saw his skills, and they said, you know what? We're going to get the quarterback, but we're also going to get the guy that we like more than anybody else in the draft. And that was the rumor going into the draft for a team that's pretty damn airtight when it comes to leaks coming out. It was that the Texans like Will Anderson more than anybody. If they trusted their process, they should have done what they did. And for whatever reason, these two, and listen, I'll admit, I didn't actually listen to the discourse. I just saw one of their posts pop up, and I said, why are we having this conversation? And clearly we know the answer to this already. And you're talking about the hypothetical other possibility that the Texans could have had here, where they could have had pick 12, and they could have had pick 33. And then the next year, they also could have had a pick in the first round. They did not have one. They took Kamari Lassiter with their first pick. I think it worked out okay for them. And they also had a third round pick. What could they have gotten out of those 3 picks that they traded to go and get Will Anderson. And it's a weird hypothetical conversation because you have to involve a lot of captain hindsight when you're having it. And I hate that. I really despise this about pre-draft conversation. And if you've heard me on the air, you've heard me bitch and moan about NFL pre-draft conversation because I generally think it's pointless. But there's too many people that talk as if they are an authority figure about the draft leading up to it. And then we just forget what they were saying about specific players leading up to the draft. And it's not to say that all those people who are talking about it aren't right about some things. I'm sure they are. And I'm sure that some of them put in the homework. But very often the guys who put in the homework are wrong. NFL teams are bad at this. And it's weird to have this idea, hey, the Texans drafted one of the better players on defense in the league. They traded a lot to go get that guy. He looks like he could be a perennial Pro Bowl kind of player, if not an all-pro at some point. But what would have happened if they had used their picks on other players? Here's what would have probably happened. They probably would have swung and missed a couple of times, like they swung and missed with Kenyon Green. So why are we having this conversation? Why is this conversation blowing up, and why is it occupying so much space on my timeline?
Well, that's a algorithm problem. Take it up with Grok on that one.
It's like they know it's going to trigger me, Sean. It's like they know that I think this conversation's effing stupid. No offense to those two. They're looking for time for content filler this time of year. I get it, but
they were, I will say, the content of what they're talking about, I think they're revisiting a lot of old trades, and like just on their show or whatever, they're looking, backwards with hindsight. And both those guys, like you said, more in the football nerd community than anything. The community that was most against the Will Anderson trade, like more than Jeremy, which I thought it was important to put in the preamble of I hope I'm wrong.
Right.
They should know more than I do, but
it could be a day that lives in infamy.
Yes.
Like Pearl Harbor.
Yes. But those two guys they were saying, or at least one of them, I forgot which one's which. They're saying that they're looking back on it. There's no way you can say that the Texans didn't win the trade. They're like,
no.
they I guess, swallowed their pride. They put down their analytics calculators,
which is
good.
And
we're like, hey, actually getting a guy who I haven't looked at the odds recently, but I'm gonna assume is like a top 5 defensive player of the year preseason ballot guy, probably top 3,
definitely top 10.
Yeah, I think that getting that guy is more important than the hypothetical 12th, 33rd pick and then the 25th pick in the next year's draft.
You do want to have a deep roster, and you want as many good players as you possibly can get, but you have to go into every single draft assuming you are going to miss often.
It's also getting a blue chipper,
right?
Is like
so hard,
so valuable, especially the Texans where they were at that point, where they weren't a deep team, but they were a team that had a bunch of like okay NFL players on it. They needed blue chippers, and that's what led them to the playoffs that first year.
Not just a blue chipper with the potential to be a leader. And that is the thing that we always heard about Anderson going into the draft. So this was a home run pick by the Texans. And I want us to look at pre-draft trades. If we're into those kind of conversations, for the people who want to do these debates, which I think are pointless, I'm going to tell you that the way that you look at draft pick value is incorrect. It just is. It's currency. And guess what? Sometimes, say you're buying a home or something like that, you are going to spend more than you think for something that you really, really want. If it's over that line of what you think the value is, do you walk away every single time? And sure, sometimes you're going to swing and miss, and you're going to make purchases that don't work out so well. But it's a weird thing that regularly happens where you are looking at somebody else making a purchase, and you are second guessing the entirety of what they bought based off of the consensus opinion of picks and how valuable they are. Pick 1, pick 2, pick 3 versus pick 33, 34, 35. And that's not how anyone that's actually in the game really looks at it. And sure, you're comparing mock drafts and you've got that draft pick value chart. You've got all sorts of tools that a decade ago we didn't have.
Yeah, or only teams had. Like the
Right.
Jimmy Johnson value chart was not like a thing that media people talked about and harped on, where now everyone is playing a GM.
Exactly. And that part is cool if you want to do that, okay? I'm just tired of the immediate reaction to big trades that involve a lot of draft picks is always to assume that the team that traded a lot screwed up right away, right out of the chute. And it's why I do not like pre-draft conversations. I used to. And then I learned I'm going to be wrong a lot. My biggest hand up, Jake Locker. I thought Jake Locker was going to be awesome. Is it because the first ever college football game I witnessed at school, Jake Locker skull bleeped Syracuse University into oblivion? Yes, that is legitimately it. Not the most educated opinion, but I thought, oh my God, this guy can throw, he can run, blah, blah, blah. And I was so sure about it. And I'm in college and I don't know any better. And he was so bad. He was so bad at the NFL level. And I remember just thinking to myself, I really don't know what I'm talking about. Even if I put in the work, I wouldn't know what I'm talking about. So why do I want to have these conversations about what a team should do before the draft? I'd rather see what a team does, react to what they do, say, all right, I see what they're going for here, or I don't see what they're going for here, and then revisit it 3 to 4 years later. And I guess we just don't want to do that anymore. And I get it. Like, everyone's looking for time for content to fill the void, especially this time of year, especially if you're primarily football focused. But I mean, revisiting something, why are we having this debate about like all the different avenues that could have gone? This was very clearly a home run pick by the Texans. I understand that they were agreeing like, yeah, this was the right move. But to be so against it when it happened, I still do not understand why people were so much like that. And I know we heard a lot of that all day long. And it's kind of amusing to me on the Texans and the things that people have really overreacted to, whether it was winning the last game of the 2022-2023 season, which gave the Texans the number 2 overall pick. Everyone was freaking out about that. And then during the draft, the people who were freaking out about trading up to go and get Will Anderson. I just think it's really funny how a lot of the overreactions that we have seen locally have aged so poorly when it comes to this team. And I do think it is a reflection that they are just under better stewardship at this moment in time. Whether you want to credit Hannah McNair for that or Nick Caserio for that, like that's totally up to you. But this is something that no one should be revisiting as if the debate made sense at the time. Everyone should be committing seppuku and shame over the fact that they were dead ass wrong and got angry about something that they had a different value for than the Houston Texans did. And I think that D'Amico Ryans and Nick Caserio very much knew what the hell they were doing when they made that move. And they deserve credit because they showed balls there and they shook conventional norms and did this.
Yeah, and I think a big part, and this was the night that kind of changed it all for the Texans franchise. But at that point, like D'Amico Ryans had only been on the job for 2 months, no, 3, 4 months, however long it was, whenever he got hired. And the Nick Caserio did not have the track record that he has, like the drafting track record that he has now. The McNairs were clown show ownership situation basically since when? Like 2018?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's when people were like, oh, this is not a well-run ship. And so they had none of the goodwill. And they made a move that, like you said, you listen to any pre-draft conversation where they're talking about trades or what teams should do. And no matter who it is, people I like, people I don't like, they'll get on this show. They'll get on a show. And for half the teams in the league, they know what they should do, Paul. They should trade down in the draft. well, someone's got to trade up. If trading down is always the right answer, like, well, someone trades up for a reason.
Great point.
And that's what it's a riskier play. It's safer just to play it by the spreadsheet that everyone conforms to. But at the end of the day, this is what the Will Anderson trade was. You just got to get good players. You just got to get awesome freaking players. And if you can get 2 of them in the same draft, it's probably worth trading next year's first round pick.
Trading up can get you Patrick Mahomes. If you think the guy could be a Patrick Mahomes kind of player or a Will Anderson player, you do it. If your scouting process leads you to believe you're drafting a foundational piece because of his talent and leadership qualities, you pony up and you ignore everybody.
Because that's where the conflict between the, hey, we're going to have some misses, going 50% is all right.
Mm-hmm.
And that there is true. That is like, hey, just try to get the most picks, be 50%, you have the most players. But at the end of the day, when you're watching games at the end of the season, a lot of times it comes down to, oh my God, they have a guy we cannot block.
Big time players.
Not they have 3 guys that are all kind of good.
And I would like everyone who's having these conversations, specifically Palazzolo and Sam Monson, to please stop having assumptions that you nail all the alternative picks that you could have made if you didn't draft Will Anderson and pony up all those picks. You know what's more likely? You landing that one guy and getting the most that you want out of that guy, as opposed to hitting on all of those extra picks that you get. A lot of these teams that get these big hauls, very often they don't end up getting much in return for that big haul. They get all those picks, but did they nail all the picks? So please stop being so sure of yourself. That's all I'm asking in the pre-draft process, and especially in the immediacy after the draft.